Hey everybody, it's JWitz here with a new Nintendo Fact video. The Legend of Zelda series is by far one of the most beloved and longest running franchises in Nintendo's history. Zelda games don't come by all too often, typically dropping one main series title for every new console. In fact, the Zelda series is actually quite a bit different from Nintendo's other two largest franchises, Pokémon and Mario. Both of these have had dozens of spin-off titles over the years, ranging from racing to sports to puzzles to fighting games. Meanwhile, Zelda spin-offs are actually pretty rare. But working with today's guest, Alex from Zelda Universe, I found that if you do a bit of digging, you can unearth a handful of rare, unexpected, and even downright scary Zelda games.
That's right. Today, we're going to explore some of the most obscure Zelda games you might have missed.
The missing links.
Sure, we'll go with that.
Did you own a Japanese Famicom in the mid to late 90s, the Satellaview broadcast system add-on, and a subscription to St. Giga's satellite radio? No. Well, that would be why you missed the BS Zelda games. No, seriously, that's what they're called. BS.
Short for Broadcast Satellite View, the BS Zeldas were part of a Japan-only Famicom add-on, which allowed you to download exclusive Nintendo content over satellite.
The closest thing we received to this in the States would have been the Sega Channel, if you remember that. These games are especially rare because of their timing. The Satellaview ran mostly during the lifespan of the Nintendo 64, but it was on the Super Nintendo. There are two main categories of Zelda games to come from this system. The first, BS The Legend of Zelda, came in two separate quests and had remixed elements from the original NES Legend of Zelda title. These ones are especially interesting because they came with the upgraded 16-bit sprite palette, offering a similar graphical upgrade to the one you see in the Super Mario All-Stars game.
The second one, BS Ancient Stone Tablets, uses elements from the Super Nintendo's A Link to the Past.
However, despite both of these games being remixes of past Zelda titles, there are a ton of elements that make them unique. For one, you don't actually play as Link, but as the player avatar you selected for the Satellaview system, male or female.
The games also all operate on episodes on a clock-based system. Episodes were usually played at 1 hour at a time with a live countdown, forcing players to explore as much as they could during the time of the game was being broadcast by the system. Everything in this game was score-based, and players would race to compete for prizes during the 1 hour sessions.
You've heard this from me 1,000 times, but as you all know, I don't typically support emulation. However, considering there is absolutely zero way to play these games without a time machine, I think it's worth emulating these if you've never played them before. There's a surprising amount of patches that have come from the community at bszelda.zeldalegends.net.
There is one thing emulation can never bring back though, and that's the fact that both games also use live voice through the game.
Across your journey, the old man Agana gives you tips and gameplay secrets as the clock ticks down. Here's an example.
さらに X ボタンを押せばいい。迷宮に入っている君は X ボタンを押すと行ったことのある部屋が書いてある。
You know, all these voices are reminding me of the CDI.
Oh, we're going there, aren't we?
Yeah, we're going there. Next up on our stop for strange Zelda games, the Zelda CDI trilogy.
Here's another Zelda game strapped to some weird hardware. Once upon a time, in the early 90s, Nintendo wanted a CD add-on for the Super Nintendo. They began work on the system with Sony, but eventually negotiations fell through when it came to licensing. Nintendo decided to negotiate a better deal and undercut Sony by working with their rival Philips. Poor Sony had to make a CD game console all by themselves without Nintendo's help. Oh, I think one of these two companies maybe regrets that decision.
The irony is that a Philips created Super Nintendo add-on never ended up happening either, but their deal with Philips allowed them to use Nintendo's licensed characters on their own console, the Philips CDI. This brought us a new Triforce of Zelda games, some of the rarest in existence, but maybe not the most beloved.
What a cruel joke! These games go for hundreds of dollars due to the CDI never selling very well and the stock being low. But what exactly do you get for that investment? Nightmares. The answer is nightmares. There's not much I can say about the CDI games that hasn't been said before. They aren't even Nintendo developed, and they're pretty unanimously regarded as the worst games to wear the Zelda title ever.
The much more well-known group of games include Link, The Faces of Evil, and Zelda, The Wand of Gamelon. Each game is a side-scroller and featured a separate main character saving the other one from Ganon.
These animated cutscenes are nothing but pure terror. Everyone's a maniac. It's like they took the usual Zelda NPC dialogue scenes and added a long puff of Scarecrow's fear toxin for good measure. But in a weird way, these cutscenes are really the only reason to play these games. The platforming is so frustrating and awkward that you almost begin to use cutscenes as a reward for fighting through it. Just how weird can it get? I gotta keep playing so I can find out.
You've probably seen...
I wonder what's for dinner.
And I know you've seen...
I can't wait to bomb some Dodongos!
But grind through both of these games and I'm telling you, you will know true fear.
I replace your soul. You will obey. Ow! Ow!
The third and rarest of the three, Zelda's Adventure, plays more like the traditional top-down Zeldas. It's also the second of the three CDI Zeldas to star, well, Zelda. It came from a completely different developer than the first two, and you can really tell right off the bat.
There's still cutscenes this time, but by cutscenes I mean creepy old man live-action sequences. His mouth doesn't even match the words, and sometimes it's just crossfades. Personally, I think this game is the worst of the three. It's the least broken in terms of fair gameplay, but it's just lifeless. Here's the music that you're gonna hear through 90% of Zelda's Adventure.
Okay, so you know how every Zelda game we've done so far has voice work?
Yeah?
Well, I've got another one. Navi Trackers, the lost game mode hidden within the Japanese version of Four Swords Adventure.
Oh yeah! Some of you might remember a game by the name of Tetris Trackers, announced around 2003. I remember reading about it in a Nintendo Power or something similar. Meant to be a standalone game where you compete against friends for treasure on the Game Boy Advance with a Game Boy cable, while Tetra narrates on the GameCube.
Unfortunately, this mode never made it through the English-speaking territories at all. But in the Japanese version, Four Swords Plus, the mode was alive and well under the name Navi Trackers. Up to 4 players compete collecting stamps, and yes, there is a ton of voice work for this game. Tetra and her pirate crew have a lot to say as they comment on your gameplay.
Also interesting is that Tetra can actually pronounce player names using a voice synthesizer. Unlike English, Japanese words can be pronounced perfectly simply by reading each single syllable letter combination. Each player in Navi Trackers can create their own 2-syllable name.
In earlier previews for the game in English, it looked like the players would just be able to name themselves after a single letter. But for some reason, the English version just didn't make it to the final game at release. There's speculation that localization was a major issue, but to this day, nobody knows the real reason.
That's too bad. Tetra rocks.
Indeed.
Last but not least are multiple Tingle games that you likely might have missed. Yes, I am serious. This guy has multiple spin-off games. And while some of these are just mini-games, like Japan's Tingle Balloon Fight and the Too Much Tingle Pack, there are actually 2 fully fledged Tingle games that made their way onto the Nintendo DS.
The first title, freshly picked Tingle's Rosy Rupee Land,
that rolls right off the tongue,
did see a European English language release in 2007, a year after its release in Japan.
It's a very strange game that never seems to take itself seriously, and that's what I think makes it so fun. You start the game as a middle-aged man, but once tricked into losing your money to an evil rupees Ponzi scheme, it's up to Tingle to save the day. With more money. And Pinkle, the fairy. Ooh. While it isn't quite the same as a traditional Zelda title, it does have a fun action RPG feel that's simple but satisfying. The visual style and text-based humor kinda reminds me of the Mario and Luigi series, which actually makes sense considering that they helped develop minigames for it.
Tingle is terrible at fighting and actually has to hire bodyguards to do most of the combat for him. Finding the right bodyguard without spending too much of your free money is an interesting system.
I guess you didn't need the bodyguards for this one, though. The title actually earned itself a sequel in 2009 with another mouthful of a title, Ripened Tingle's Balloon Trip of Love. Instead of a theme with a focus on money, this game is one part Wizard of Oz parody and one part dating simulator. somehow, this game was not chosen for English localization at all. It's a shame too, because it's another fun addition to the Nintendo DS library.
It actually implements a traditional point-and-click style interface with environmental puzzles. The D-pad is hardly used at all, favoring a stylus-only playstyle.
Once again, you start the game as an ordinary middle-aged man, proving that anyone out there can be a Tingle if you dream hard enough. Your main goal is to aid your New Age Tin Man, Scarecrow, and Lion, all while earning the affections of 5 different women. It's delightfully absurd, but unfortunately the language barrier keeps it as one of the very few Legend of Zelda titles never to see an English release in one form or another. There is a translation group working on it though, so who knows? Maybe one day your dream of an English Tingle dating simulator will finally come true. I think that's about it in terms of the lesser known Zelda titles. The Legend of Zelda universe has taken us many places. Sometimes magical, sometimes dark, and sometimes downright absurd. But one thing is certain, no matter how odd, we can't wait to see where the next adventure takes us. Just as long as it never takes us here again. Thanks for watching today's video. If you want to check one of our past videos on The Legend of Zelda, you can click here to view it. Also, huge thanks to Zelda Universe for help making this video. You can check out their website at zeldauniverse.net for more info on all things Legend of Zelda, or you can check out their YouTube channel right here. I'll see you guys next time with a new Nintendo adventure.